grief post-police is like a multifaceted grief because you're not only grieving the absence of a family member, but you're grieving the fact that they could have been alive today if the system wasn't shitty and if the person that showed up wasn't shitty. You grieve repercussions that are lacking because oftentimes when your family member is killed by law enforcement, you do not get justice.
Yo, what's up? Thank you all for tuning in to the Art to Heart podcast today. My name is David Morin. I am your host. I'm a former corporate sales guy turned poet. I think I'm going to try to play with that intro for a while and see how that sticks. But I'm so excited to bring another episode to you today. Today is with a very good friend of mine. Her name is Ghada Morad. She's a Los Angeles-based Palestinian Muslim poet. She has been writing poetry since 2015 after losing her brother, Faras Morad, to an act of police brutality. Ghada writes poetry surrounding her Arab background and her experiences with the broken system in the U.S. Often the issues that she faced here tie back to the oppressive system and her roots. She finds way to reference her grief in her writing. Her goal is to create art that allows the reader to plunge into the experiences of those who have lost family to the system, to incline others to fight against the system and spur change. I also want to note that I first met Ghada on a virtual open mic over the pandemic with the Poetry Lounge and out of LA. I heard her share a poem about the experience she had of her brother being killed by Long Beach police. And the poem really struck me. I had never met her, but she had shared a side to that story that we rarely hear. At least I rarely hear. You always hear the headlines of the people who were killed. And then unfortunately that's overshadowed by a next headline we hear, but rarely do we follow up with the families and kind of experience all of the wreckage that was left in the wake of that. And that's something she shed a lot of light on in that poem she shared in that open mic. And when I heard it, I I reached out to her after, introduced myself and just thanked her for sharing that poem. And, that was the beginning of our friendship. We have shared a lot of poetry since then. And so I wanted to kind of stick to my word. I was like, people need to hear this story. And so now that I have a way to help share that story, I wanted to do that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is a good one. I hope you like it. And let's jump in.
Hey, wow, it's hard to introduce yourself. My name is Ghada. I was born and raised in California. Family's Palestinian, Muslim background and everything. I like to write poetry. Aspiring professor who talks about all sorts of stuff. That's my dream. I love to learn about activism, systematic issues, and I like to write about them too because I'm like directly impacted by them. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks. I'll have a much more official intro in the beginning before the episode. Yeah, so did you have a poem you wanted to share tonight?
Sure, yes. So I'll read it and then we can talk about it. So it's called Bad Circumstances. So I'll just go ahead.
Yeah,
So,
let's hear it.
all right, so bad circumstances. Bad circumstances make great art. That's what sets us apart from ones who had it easy growing up, who had a father that gave a fuck. Trauma makes great legacy take hold, carrying signs for ones sold into trafficking for bits of gold. Bad circumstances make art on fire, make monuments that were conspired against us to make us hurt. Bad circumstances make love more passionate, make a child throw a better fit, gives us a life more complicated, but we make the most of it. They make us move in ways unknown, and they attempt to copy us, but oh no, they try to copy our art, our words, our rhythm, and sometimes even our sadness. But it doesn't look right because with our bad circumstances, you can see the fright in our eyes that look like gems because bad circumstances somehow made us better than them. So, what do you think? I know that I messed up while reading it, but
I couldn't tell you messed up.
yeah, okay, awesome.
I really enjoyed that. I think you had a line about you can't copy our sadness or you can't borrow our sadness.
Yeah, so like that's kind of like appropriating like different aspects of different cultures, right? So my family is rooted in Palestine and like a lot of our art is often taken and used as like a product or oftentimes used by the Israeli state and claimed, right? So we have art and we have food and we have all sorts of things that are taken from us and they're and we don't almost I don't like to say credit, but we don't get the credit for the things that we've like are so passionate about and have created. Like there was a point in time where the colors red, green, and white were banned from being used by Palestinian artists because it was red, green, white, and black, I believe.
So all local art couldn't use those colors.
Yeah, like in Palestine, so the Israeli government banned it or something. I'm not entirely sure exactly how it was. So what they did is they started painting watermelons because watermelons had red, black, green, and white, right? And that's the color of the Palestinian flag, right? So I think that that's also like a very amazing thing. Like, okay, despite being banned from being able to do this, so we're gonna like rage against it and then just say F you anyways and do it. And like
How'd they respond to the watermelon?
I think people there was they got in trouble for it, I'm pretty certain. I don't remember exactly what the story was, but I what I remember about it is during like when there's like kind of like festivals or protests, Palestinian men will pile a bunch of watermelons on their heads and like walk around with them. So that I think
How's that
is a
even possible?
you never see people like walking like in the Middle East a lot of the
Like
time.
multiple watermelons or just one? Like piles of watermelons on their head?
You can look up an image of it. There's like
Oh, wow.
5 watermelons he's balanced on his head. I don't know how he does it, I have no idea.
That sounds impossible.
You should go ever to the Middle East, you're gonna see a lot of things with, like, street vendors
Mhm.
pile so many things on their shoulders, like, they have, like, a lot of upper body strength for sure.
When I lived in Southeast Asia, there were women who had oops, there were women who had they'd carry a lot of water on
Yeah,
their heads
see?
because yeah, it was easier to balance, and their heads are these strong ass necks.
Exactly. But I bring that up because, for instance, we have a keffiyeh, it's like a scarf in the Palestinians where it's often black and white. It almost looks checkered, and, like, there are some brands that are taking it and, like Louis Vuitton used it to like they use the design to make a scarf and it's like worth like they try to sell it for a lot of money and it's that's I don't think that's okay, like oftentimes these brands also utilize like systems that oppress people like sweatshops and things like that. So it's like, I don't know, it's just all of it is just piling on and it's really awful and it's like they're misrepresenting our ethnicity a lot of the
Is this
time.
poem kinda like your fist up to that
I guess so.
rebellion?
I mean, a lot of the time, like, big corporations or people in general will take, like, a piece of art that is created by marginalized groups, and they try to rock it, but I don't think they rock it like we do because we made it, you know? I'm really trying to be more, like, accepting and kind to, like, people who for instance, like, I would give you a keffiyeh even though you're not Palestinian. Like, I would tell you to wear one because if you stand for the cause, I think you should wear one,
Mm.
right? But if you're taking it, creating a design with it, and, like, for instance, people who support like the apartheid state in Israel, Zionists, they have taken them and placed like the Israeli flag on the keffiyeh and they'll wear it. So, you know, it's almost offensive to take something that is created by this marginalized group and place a flag on it that is pretty much genociding them, right? But I mean, not to get too far into politics, I just I don't
It's real life
yeah.
events.
Yeah, just in general, like, I mean, African Americans or just black people in general. I don't wanna use the word African Americans because I know not all black people are African American, but cornrows and braids and stuff like that, like, when anybody starts to wear them, it's like cornrows were like, different types of braids were used like, in the past for during slavery, like, for people to escape. They would actually, like, weave
Oh, they have maps,
on yeah, exactly. So it's like
like secret hidden maps.
yeah,
I heard of something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, you style while we suffer. That's exactly, like, my thing now. It's
Mm.
like, "No, you guys are being trying to be stylish," and, like, I sometimes I didn't understand it because I was like, "Okay, it looks pretty, like, who cares?" Right? But at the same time, like, black women were ridiculed all the time for they are till this day ridiculed for wearing different hairstyles like that, and,
Yeah, I saw a post about just now passing in the Senate to stop discriminating against black women's hair.
exactly, yeah, yeah,
I can't believe it's yeah. I mean, I'm glad that's happening, but I can't believe it's just now happening.
yeah. Yeah, so this poem is about, like, a lot of not only it doesn't have to be an ethnic thing, but, like, I also think of extremely famous people who sing about these things, and
Mm,
it's somebody wrote the song for them to sing, right? Oftentimes, and I'm like, when someone's singing from their heart because they endured this, right? So, like, when I see, like, poets go up and read their poems, I'm like, "Wow," like, feels so good. It's so different from seeing, like, a Hollywood star, like,
mm,
singing the same thing, like, they'll they'll utilize the same art that we've created, but it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't look the same.
yeah,
But the only difference between us and a celebrity is that we just didn't get the luck of being rich and famous, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, I'm sure, like, there are poets that do become very, very popular and very, very famous and, like, all sorts of stuff, but yeah, I mean, that's all I really
When, do you typically write about that often? Or do you like to write about a lot of other stuff, or
no, I write about all sorts of other stuff, like
but from what I know, from what I've heard, a lot of your poetry is advocating
yeah,
for
it is
causes.
yeah, for sure. It definitely is. A lot of it is.
I really admire that because sometimes it's really hard for me to connect to something that deeply to have, like, a powerful enough poem come out of it.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I mean?
I get what you mean, and it's also scary, like, when you talk about these things, like, you can get some backlash, like, people can get upset, but if your community is primarily supportive of these things, then you're gonna feel really good when you do it. Um, like, I grew up being, like, bullied for being an Arab Muslim, and, like, I suffered a lot in my life for being my ethnic background, and I know that you come from a marginalized group also, but I don't know what your experience has been like. Like, I don't know if you experience a lot of racism, but when you sit there and you start to think about those experiences, it does fuel like a poem, and I'm sure you could write one if you wanted to.
Ugh, I'm sure I could. I'm sure there've been some experiences. I grew up in a mostly farm town,
Mm,
small farm town in the Central Valley, and so there's a lot of, migrant communities, and there was a lot of Latinos around. So, I mean, I also lived in a very, can you say, very conservative city. It's very since it's a lot of agriculture, and I think we even had Trump over for a fundraiser during his campaign. So, yeah, there was I'm sure yeah, there was some, but unless I was just ignorant to it and didn't really kind of notice it.
And you don't have to actually have gone through it, like, your ancestors went through it. Like, you get in touch with it by maybe watching, like, a film about it or talking to a person about it. Because whether it was you who went through it, or, whether you notice that you went through it or not, like, it exists and you know it does. So, you
How do
might
you
about
connect with your ancestors?
how do you connect with your
How do you
ancestors?
how do you connect with your ancestors?
Wow. I don't know if I connect with my ancestors. I connect with
I'm
the
sure
li
you do.
I mean, I guess I do think about them sometimes, but I think about people who are living there right now, like in Palestine.
Mm,
May not be directly related to most of them, but I have, like, family that I talk to, and I think, like, I don't know. I've never connected with my ancestors. Maybe, like, you gotta burn some sage or something deeply, like, what did you guys go through? Like, let me feel it.
well, yeah, I recently started to try that a little bit. I don't try it every day, but yeah, I read this book and, you have to have a little altar of, things you love, things that really, they can represent cultural, but if you wanna connect with, like, your ancestry, they said you have to make like a sacrifice. Not like a sacrifice, but like something of cultural importance just to put there. An offering. Should have been sacrifice, it's an offering.
I was like, "Oh, man, are you not?"
That coulda got ugly, sorry, guys, no.
Nope.
No, no, it's not a sacrifice, it's an offering, something that is significant to you or your lineage. Um so I recently got like a sugar skull, which is what they use for the Dia de Muerto, the Day of the Dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and just some other stuff. And yeah, I do have sage. I'll use it here and there, but I'll light some candles and just kind of sit there and meditate for a while. And um, I did try to access that when I was writing my manuscript recently. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A friend recommended it.
I saw the altar that you were trying to build, and you took, like, a picture, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. I should probably do that."
Yeah,
It's
you should. It can be calming.
it's very pretty too. I think I would probably do it for the aesthetics.
Just for a decoration.
Yeah, probably.
So how long have you been writing poetry?
I've been writing it since I was a kid, but I never wrote it, like, officially. Yeah, I've been like, I always used to write, like, I found an old diary of mine, like, from when I was a little kid, and
Whoa.
I've always written poems, but I never had the confidence to share them, and I used to post on, like, there's, like, a poetry page online, and I made an account, and I would like, post my poems on there. There'd be like, "Love is beautiful. Oh, give me a flower." Mary, like, it was a little, like, when you're a child, but I've written them forever. I just only started taking it more seriously, like, last year. But I've always and I didn't just write poems, I'd write, like, about different topics, like, I
About
wrote
poetry and the different topics?
it wasn't I
Oh,
would just topics in general, like a paragraph, like, about
okay.
is about it, like, almost like a blog type of thing, right? So I wrote about forgetting, uh, I wrote about, jealousy, stuff like that,
You
just, like,
still write blogs?
I did for a little bit. I wrote, like,
Uh,
one about grief, one about imposter syndrome, and one about my brother, and just to, like, bring that up, like, my brother was you already know this, but for whoever's listening, my brother was killed in 2015 by, Long Beach police. He was unarmed, and he tried shrooms for the first time and had a, like, bad reaction, and he jumped out of a window, and he needed medical attention, and basically the officer got upset that he wasn't getting down on the ground, but he was really, like, slow and, like, rubbing his fingers together. There were firefighters there that were willing to help, um, and he ended up the officer got so upset that my brother just was confused and wasn't getting on the ground, so my brother had put his hands up, but he literally shot him in the palms of his hands and his chest and his lower abdomen, and he died at 20. He was a really bright person, and he was actually poetic. Like, I looked at some of the stuff he left behind, and he wanted to be like he wanted to change the world. Like he was really interested in civil rights too, and he had gotten into a lot of amazing universities. He was just about to start university. He was like a nationally ranked speech and debate champion, really smart and like what is it, eloquent? Is that a word?
Eloquent, yep.
Eloquent speaker. Yeah, he got an award named after him
Was
after
he in speech and debate?
yeah, he was for a long time. He was a speech and debate coach.
Oh
Re
wow, very eloquent indeed. Then
Yeah, so that's, also what kind of like I actually have a box where I write letters to him, like, every year or every 6 months, something like that, and I haven't read them. I read one of them recently, but it's very interesting to see how you change, over time. So I think it's really like something that you can do when you lose somebody is write letters every year, or if you have the patience, you can write one every month and see how you change over time. Because when it's
especially in that direction, like who it's directed to, you're writing it to. Like that tone
that
would change so much compared to talking to anyone else. Do you
yeah,
read the letters out loud when you write them? Like, do you read them to him, or you just kind of write them in that
no,
way?
no, I don't read them out loud. I'm honestly like I know there are some people who like read things out loud, like when they pray and talk to somebody, but like I've always been that type of person who thinks that like all of the spiritual stuff that I do can just be done in my head, and I know that the spirit will, like, hear me because they're powerful enough to be able to hear my thoughts, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's so much that for them to be able to hear it. I think you're right. They'll be able to hear it either way if there's something there to hear.
Mm.
But I think there's just a certain power kind of when you put your thoughts to a word and hear them yourself.
There is, and I totally get that. I think it's just maybe it's just depression, like, I'm too lazy to read it out loud, I have no idea what it is. But yeah, that's what I've
How
been
long ago did
doing.
your was your brother killed?
It so it'd be 7 almost 7 years. So in May, it'll be 7 years.
How old were you?
I was 16.
And he was 20?
Uh-huh.
4 years difference.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
same age me and my siblings are apart.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really it's also, like, often I think, like, what would it have been like if it was me? So, I'm like, the perspective, like, siblinghood, I know that's not a real word, but siblinghood is such a important part of your life. Like, whenever I see siblings fighting, I get really upset because
Mm,
I think of the dynamic, like, when you are a younger sibling, you view your sibling so significantly different from how they view you, like, you're almost like, they raised you with your
they helped
parents.
form you. Yeah, they helped form you.
I learned English from my brother when I was a kid. I learned Arabic from my mom. My mom didn't speak English.
Oh,
Yeah, so I learned English from my brother. I didn't really like my dad very much when I was a kid, so I didn't really talk to him. Um, so yeah, I mean, my brain, like many parts of it are made up of things that he taught me, you know? So that's why, like, I think of Coco, like the movie.
oh,
I do think of Coco, the movie, in two different ways. I think of it in one way, like, okay, I know that in Coco, like, this person is never going to die if there's somebody on this planet that's still thinking of them. So, like, just to switch topics, like, super quick, I'm like, I like to talk about him with as many people as possible because I'm like, I want him to outlive me in the
mm,
Coco, like, I know that I have fulfilled my purpose if I do that, you know? And another thing is, like, if they live in your mind, they will never die, like, in general, not only because of, they'll be living in this cloud or whatever if people are thinking about them, but also because this person is being carried with you every day
mm,
because something. So, and it's them, like in my religion, teachers are very important, and I don't know if it's, like, in the Quran or it's just a part of the culture, but teachers are valued a lot because, basically every alphabet, like, every letter from the alphabet that a teacher teaches is a hasanah, and have like, in God's eyes, hasanah is, like, a good deed. Like, we have it's like a point like, I don't know, this is how I understand it, I don't know.
Each like letter is a good deed.
Like, each letter that you teach a child.
Hmm.
So, let you taught, like, a class of 25 children, you teach them, like, the letter A. Every time they use the letter A, God blesses you, basically, or God gives you a point. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh wow.
So it's like a point system in my head, that's how I view it. I don't know if a scholar listened to this, maybe he'd think I was stupid, but, like, in our religion, like, every time you teach somebody something and they utilize it, you are getting it's like making an investment, right? Stock that always goes up, right? So
Compound interest.
yeah, yeah. So you're always reaping benefits when you teach others things because being teaching others is performing kindness, right? Of course, if you're teaching someone like an asshole, like that's different. But
Yeah.
but you
That's a
know,
beautiful philosophy to know that whatever you're teaching is gonna, yeah, I mean, it's gonna come back to you tenfold.
yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
really cool thing that I was thinking about, and I was like, okay, like my I don't know why I started to think about that, but I also think that it transfers, so, like, my brother taught me this, I'm gonna teach somebody else this, they're gonna teach somebody else, so he's the one who's getting all the benefits, you know? But, yeah, I mean, grief kinda like it kinda like just I guess to focus on that, like, it's like it almost feels like a bomb, like, hit your home, and you are sorting out the pieces very, very slowly, and it's very difficult to start to compartmentalize things. But after many years of rebuilding, like things start to make sense, but in a different way, right? So you start to see the beauty in things. Like, what did I learn from this? How has it made me grow? Like the synergy of it all starts to look. By the way, this is like how a podcast sounds with somebody who has like severe like ADHD, probably. So whoever. Well,
Um,
yeah.
what was it? You kind of described it macro, like a big picture a little bit, but I'm just kind of curious of what it was like. Earlier you talked about the importance of siblinghood. And so what was like the first thing you missed or the thing that like just made it feel real after your brother was killed,
You know,
that you kind of didn't have that siblinghood anymore?
I guess for me, the biggest thing is like I can't like call him to ask him a question about something, and he has to answer because he's my brother. Like, and he's like kind of it was me, him, and my mom mostly, right? So I would go to him for advice if I needed help with something, right? And it's like when you lose that person and your parents are not stable anymore, you can't turn to them either. And it was just me and him, so it's like you feel extremely isolated because you can turn to your friends, but that's different. Like, I know that, like, we have a saying in Arabic, blood does not turn into water. I don't know if they say it in English too, but like, basically, like, your blood is blood. Like, your family is still your family. I believe in that to an extent. I know that there are families that you need to detach from, and I have
Mhm.
times.
And there's
Um,
chosen families too.
Exactly, but for some reason, I have insecurities about chosen families because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, what if I'm a burden?" Right? And, like, people can tell me a million times that I'm not, but I'm like, it's not the same as having, like, a blood-related brother that grew up with me, knows my life, knows like, there's nobody else in the world that is gonna relate to me like my brother does, you know?
Mhm.
They have the same parents, and I will never have that person to talk to again, and it's very, very painful, and your sibling will have a different type of patience with you most of the time, right? So it's just I miss being able to turn to somebody who understands what my upbringing was like. And also, the development of our relationship was, like, killed by it because he's gone, like, it's like I am so, I am always longing for that relationship because I wanted it to develop, I wanted to see how we would grow, I wanted to watch him, graduate and become successful
Mm.
and get married and have kids, like, my children will never meet their uncle, me and him will never sort out our issues that we had. He had never got to watch me mature. He never got to watch me graduate. Um, it is super upsetting to think about how stuff like that happens, and that's I guess that answers the question. But I miss something that I never had, which is very interesting. Um, you know. And that's also grief that comes with relationships, like, "Oh, I thought I was gonna get married to this person and they broke up with me," like, and you start to long for what could have been. So I'm always longing for what could have been with my brother. Um, and it's a very, complicated grief for sure.
You mentioned to me before, um, about, like, stages to grieve, and, like, there's no manual to deal with what you're dealing with. And
Yeah.
so, I kinda wanted to ask and just ask more a little bit more about what those I mean, it's impossible to say these are what the stages are, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the stages.
Oh, yeah. No, I know there's, like, 5 stages of grief that, like, were created by there's this psychologist, I forgot her name, honestly. There's, like, with grief, there's, like, bargaining, uh, God, I forgot what they were. There's, like,
Mm.
bargaining.
Are they helpful to know that, like, there's a stage you consult with it?
Honestly, like, I don't really remember them, that's the thing. There used to be, like, an acronym and everything, but, let's see, like, 5 stages of grief. Yeah, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Um,
Mm,
yeah, definitely. I can align with that, like, definitely denial at first. You're like, "What the hell just happened?" And then you're like, of course, you're, like, super duper upset, like, devastated. You're angry that lost your you've lost your loved one, depending also
mhm.
how they died. You feel neglected. Sometimes you'll feel upset with them, even though they had nothing to do with it.
Just kinda mad at them for leaving
Yeah,
and
and then
not
you
being here anymore.
exactly, like, bargaining for sure, like, I'd be like, I would give up my leg, like, amputate my leg and give me my old life back, amputate my arm, give me my old life back, like, you know, like, take me instead type of deal, or, take my house, take my everything, just make me homeless, like, take everything, but just give me my brother back, that definitely happens, and then you have really, really bad depression, and then you I don't think the depression ever goes away, but the acceptance, I can say that I have always accepted the fact that he's gone because he's gone and I can't change that, but, um,
What
I
did the letters help? Writing the letters? How was that kind of helpful? Was that more for you or more for him? Like, what was your intention behind writing him letters?
that my intention behind writing him letters is just to let him know that will never forget about him, Um, I don't know, I just, like I imagine him looking down on me from, like, some heaven type of deal, and, he sees me doing this and it makes him happy. That's why I do it. Um I don't know what I think that's the only reason why I do it, just so that I'm talking to him. But I'm always thinking about him, like, there isn't
Yeah.
a that goes by that I don't think about it. Like,
What do you think about most about him?
it's almost like there's, like, a poem this girl wrote where she has just a quote, that I started seeing all over the place. now I remember you for longer than I've known you. I'm not there yet, because I knew him for 16 years, but 7 years is very ouch, hurts a lot because that's a big number. Um, but you asked me what did you ask me? What do I miss the most about him?
Yeah, just what you miss. What do you think? Like when you say you think about him every day, I'm sure it's just memories. And I don't mean to be like kind of poking in. I'm just kind of inquiring about the memory of your brother.
No, that's okay. The reason why I brought up that quote is because I don't really remember how he was in person anymore because when you have memories, your memory actually from I heard about this, I don't know if it's true. Your memory of something is how you've remembered your last memory. Like, so let's say right now today I'm thinking about my brother, like about a scenario I had with my brother, like like I don't know, he did something,
Hmm.
like all together or something. I Next time I think about it, it's gonna be how I envisioned it this time. So it's not I don't actually remember the physical memory.
Hmm. It's like
I remember
telephone. It's just going to change a little bit each.
exactly. So that's another thing that I'm like, I wish I could tell you what I miss the most about him because me and my brother didn't particularly get along all the time, but I this is what I will never forget. When I was a kid, I had really awful insomnia. I could not sleep at all. For 2 years I couldn't sleep. And so the only place I could sleep is in his room. And we would talk, like, while I was trying to fall asleep, and I would fall asleep. He would get so annoyed. He did not wanna share a room with me, so I would just, like, kinda, like sometimes I would literally sneak into his room and sleep on the floor just for some reason, like, my human melatonin, I just really love to, like, be I felt s and the
Hmm.
same like, I remember I said, like, "I will literally pay you $5 to let me sleep in your room." I don't know what the hell it was, I think it's just the baby anxiety.
Just
Like, I
like
have
being around your big brother.
yeah, and I was a very anxious kid, and I'm still anxious till this day, so, like, there's something about, like, having, like, a big brother and, being able to be in the same room as him, it made me feel better. Um, I miss that, like, my heaven would be if there's really a heaven, um, literally just to have one of those nights just one more time. Yeah, yeah, that's all.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What was it like navigating around after, the police killed him? Like, like what was that experience like? And
There's so much, like,
is that when you started writing a lot more poetry, or were you kind of writing pretty regularly?
I don't know if I was writing poems, I was writing just about my experience, like, on Facebook, Instagram, and I after that happened, it was very confusing to be alive because you're like, "Okay, this system that is supposed to protect me and this person who has 'protect and serve' written on their car killed my brother while he was in the middle of a mental health crisis." Like, I talk about how, like, grief post-police is, like, a multifaceted grief because you're not only grieving the absence of a family member, but you're grieving the fact that they could have been alive today if the system wasn't shitty and, if the person that showed up wasn't shitty. You grieve repercussions that are lacking because oftentimes when your family member is killed by law enforcement, you do not get justice. You're grieving your interactions with people because actually it's kind of like a two-way thing. Like you you grieve the people you thought would be there for you and they are not, but you also feel a sense of gratitude down the line because now you know who's there for you when things are tough. You
When the
you know
rubber meets the road.
Yeah, exactly. You meet the fair weather friends. Like, I had a friend literally tell my best friend, like, "Ghada and her mom are too much to handle," 2 months after my brother died. I'm like, "Honey, like, did you think that I was gonna just get over it after a couple of days?" Like, you start to hear a lot of bizarre things. You start to see behavior that's really inappropriate and unfair, like, like people like
We have such an uncomfortable response to grief.
yeah, and also, like, when your family member is killed this way, it becomes a political thing, and people forget that this person was a part of a family. He is not just a number. He is not when they see a statistic, when you look at a death, a statistic revolving death, it becomes very dehumanizing. Like, you're like, "Oh, okay, 13% of the people died in this incident." Well, 13 all those people, the entire 13% probably had kids, had parents, has siblings, like
Left behind some loved one.
exactly, and it's really painful because people would message me telling me your brother deserved to die, like, you're yeah, 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 like, "Get over it," "Another criminal gone from this planet." I'm like, first of all, my brother never committed any crimes ever, and he didn't even the day he died, he literally did nothing wrong. And even when people have committed crimes in the past in general, like, people have been killed by the police that do have a criminal record, like, a police officer is not God, like, to be able to choose when to take somebody's life. So it's just in general, like, the amount of, like, backlash you get is so painful. You're grieving, like, 100 different things when you lose family members to police violence. It's a horrible experience, like, not only are you fucking dying because you're literally dying inside because a young man is gone from this earth,
Mhm.
uh, and then you're dying again because that young man is your family member, and you're dying again because people are talking shit about it, and then you're dying again because of this. So it's like this
Death by a thousand cuts.
exactly, you're just and that grief will never end because when people learn about it over time, someone's always gonna have something to say about it, you know, and, like, it's just also, like, I come from, like, my ethnic background, like, our culture like, can be very conservative, like, "Oh, your brother tried shrooms?" Like, "Oh, that's not good." I'm like, "Your kid probably does it all the time."
Seriously.
Yeah, I'm like, "You don't fuck
Seriously.
like, it shouldn't be a death sentence nonetheless." Um, it's really, really interesting to see how people react. It's very telling when I tell somebody about what happened and their reaction to it. It really helps you gauge the type of person they are. I know that not every time I'm gonna get someone who 100% is like, "Oh my god, F the police, F this and F that." There are some people who are like, "Oh man, like this is a really complicated situation." And I'm like, over time, I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to teach everyone and convince everyone and educate everyone because I'm fucking tired. I'm exhausted. I'm like, you know what? You believe whatever the fuck you want. Like,
At some point, you just gotta kinda
yeah, yeah,
separate yourself from that
yeah.
if you
So,
can. You recently went to, kinda like a gathering in LA where there's other
oh,
families of
yep,
affected,
yeah, yeah.
or where other members of their families were also killed by police. But what was that like? I mean, is there something that you got there that you can't get anywhere else that where people just with the level of understanding, everyone's so awkward about grief here, and so
Yeah, yeah, like, definitely, I actually when I went, the oxygen in the room felt different. It felt thinner, more easily like, I can breathe more easily. Um, you know, there's there's a lot of just so much to talk about. We actually had, like, 5 minutes, like, 5 to 10 minutes at each table to talk to different families to get to know them.
oh, wow.
Yeah, and you know, it was really, really nice, and I was talking to one of the family members, and I was like they went to group therapy, like, through their insurance, and they're like, "Nobody understands what we're going through," and actually the therapist leading one of their group sessions told one of the family members, "Hey, don't talk about try not to talk about how they died because it triggers other people. Like, this situation is so, so messed up, like, it's triggering other people here, and she was like, "What the fuck?" So it's like,
If
we
not
have a
there, then where?
yeah, and we're like, we have a very unique situation, you know? Our the death that like, our loss is very unique, and I'm not trying to say, like, somebody else's grief is not as, like, painful as ours, but I think ours is particularly unique and particularly painful because of the circumstances, because, again,
Like, yeah,
somebody
just how unnecessary it was and how avoidable
act
it
act
is. It didn't have to happen.
it's completely avoidable, done by somebody who's supposed to protect us. It's just it feels like a ton of betrayal, like piles on piles of betrayal, so just being around these people were like, I literally told them, I was like, well, we should just do group therapy together because because nobody's ever going to understand us like we understand each other. And we
Are there
talk.
enough people here locally to do that?
Yeah, there are, I mean, not like super close by to me, but
Yeah.
yeah. Well, in LA, like, a lot of people have been killed by the police in Los Angeles in particular, but we met a lot of family members of people who are actually, very well known, like Breonna Taylor's aunt, I met her. I met, Jacob Blake's father. Jacob Blake is still alive. He was paralyzed from the waist down. He was, shot at by the police. Thankfully, he's still around. His father and his other family members were there. Who else was there? Oscar Grant's aunt and uncle were there. His story, he was killed at the BART station in San Francisco. Was pinned down to the ground and shot at while he was pinned down to the ground, and the bullet bounced off the ground and hit his like, literally was, like, bounced back and back into his body from, like, the tiles in the
Oh,
train st
shit.
so, like,
Was that for the Fruitvale? For was
Fruitvale.
that yeah.
Yes, that's the movie.
Yeah, the
They
one with, Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that movie is about him, and so, we met these other families, and it was really nice to meet them, and there's this, thing that my friend, Elizabeth, she wrote, and it's basically, let's see here. We deal with this grief that it's like, we wonder I feel like a lot of the families are like, "Well, why isn't our situation publicized as well?" Not because we want publicity, but because we want attention to the situation that happened to our family member as well. And I remember Breonna Taylor's aunt's like, "It doesn't matter whether it's publicized or not, like, you guys count just as much," and hearing that from her was very, like, it felt really good to be able to hear that, like,
Mhm.
no one's ever able to tell, like, comfort us like that, and I found the thing my friend wrote, and basically it's one of my brother's really good friends, her name's Elizabeth. There's a song, actually, she transformed it. It says, "I never took such pleasure in a conviction, a hatred born of their own dereliction. But the police still kill and we've all lost. When will justice come for Firas?" So, that was when the Chauvin case, when he went to jail for killing George Floyd. And of course, like, we are super duper happy when there's justice. We also wonder, when will there be justice for our family member? When will there
Mhm.
attention to this case? When will there be, I there is also,
There's
uh
so many. There's just so many
yeah,
cases still.
exactly, there are so many that you can't keep up, and that's the big problem. Some will get, like, there was let me go to this, like, there is, I believe, Jacob Blake's father said, he's like, "I want every single family member to have a law named after them." Um, and it's not that, again, publicity doesn't matter. It's about creating change. Like, what is justice for me? Justice is not only holding the person who killed him accountable, but to prevent it from happening again, you know? So, that's something, like, a lot of the things I heard were very, like, when meeting all these people was so, like, touching and helpful, and it gives you hope. They have an organization where they bring us together, and they tell us how to navigate grief post police.
Bring it full circle. Grief post police.
Yep.
You had a Did you want to share that piece?
Oh, the actual one or the one that I
Yeah.
earlier from my notebook?
Whichever one you want.
That one's a little shorter. Yeah. So, all right, let's do this.
Just gotta
So,
bring it home.
yeah, let me read it. All right. So I called my psychiatrist the other day to talk about my dead brother and his murder on display. See, when you lose your loved one to police brutality, you lose your trust in the world in nearly every single way. A multifaceted nightmare with intersectionality. A young Muslim Palestinian boy shot down to his knees. My psychiatrist, he calls me pleasantly neurotic, but internally I'm unhinged and unbearably psychotic. With hopes of serotonin pills making me tolerable and robotic, I only end up in bed with my wounds against the tonic, with sage in my attic, with my thoughts nearing panic. So let me share my life with you, grief post police. It is very similar to that of my brothers and sisters in the Middle East. So look at me now with my grief on my head. The numbers on the screen that fill your hearts with dread. The statistics in the paper are my beloved.
So the audio quality went out at the end of the poem. I just wanted to clarify what the last line was. Um, so look at me now with my grief on my head. The numbers on the screen that fill your hearts with dread. The statistics in the paper are of my beloved brother, Feras, that's dead. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
It is, I really can't imagine going through anything that you've been through.
Thanks.
And I wanted to thank you for kind of coming on and sharing a little bit of that
Of
in your poetry. How has your writing changed since all of this happened, since you were writing before?
um, well, how long do you want me to go back?
What do you mean?
Like, writing before when? Like, before he died? Or
Yeah, yeah.
oh, man, I mean, I was writing before he died. A lot of it is, like, writing as a 16-year-old, or 15, 14.
Mm.
You're writing about your crush. Like, I would be so dramatic. Like, "You tore my heart to pieces, and I will never be the same," like, his eyes, they glimmer so beautifully, like, shit like that,
Yeah,
like
you recently wrote a love poem and sent it, and I was like, "Oh, I haven't read one of these from you yet." So that
yeah,
was,
I don't think I've written about love in a long time because I haven't loved anyone in a really long time, and, you know, I don't know if I've ever been really, really in love with anyone either. I think yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very
loved. You
I
definitely loved.
why do you say that?
No, like, you've still experienced love if you haven't been in love.
Oh, yeah, no, I've definitely loved people, but I don't think I've had that true love that I'll never forget.
It's overrated.
It it's sounds like a lot. I'm like, I want that true love to be the person that I marry, so I'm like, hopefully I don't have to go through that shit.
Yeah, and you've written a little bit about that too.
I do write about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Alright, well, thank you again so much, again, for coming on. I'll probably have you on again once I have a little bit more of a polished structure to this, but I
Thank
appreciate you coming on, experimenting this out with me.
thank you, and I hope that all the political things I shared did not offend anybody. I don't know, I don't have the sources up and reading it perfectly off of the sources, but I hope that I did okay there.
It's just your experience, your side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Alright. Well, thank you again, everyone. Have a good night. Damn, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening today. If there's anything I hope that you might get out of this conversation with Ghada, it's that, a lot of shit happens in the world, and many times we are quick to put our own biases onto that before having any kind of compassion for something that just happened. Like she said, it's so dehumanizing when we just make it a percentage and a statistic. And a lot of people use those statistics to favor whatever side they fall on. And all I'm trying to ask is, before you even think of your side, just to sit and know that a family has been affected for the rest of their lives. We hear about these people and these names. They circulate for a couple weeks, a few weeks, and then we kind of move on. But all of these people who we hear about, those families are forever changed and forever affected. And many of them are still picking up the pieces when the rest of us are just lost in this argument against each other. And so no matter what news headline you read, just, think about it a little bit deeper, sit with it a little bit deeper, and know that those words you're reading are affecting families very deeply in a lot of different ways that many of us are lucky enough to never have to know. I'll leave it at that, y'all. Thank you so much for coming in, and we'll see you next week.